And so here we are at the end of our journey. We've taken quite the trip through the history of EC2, its concepts, and how to work with it. Hopefully this has shown just how much power you can have as an individual contributor nowadays. The ability for anyone to sign up into AWS and have the power of multi-core commercial servers right at their fingertips. It's pretty insane how far this field has progressed. But I do have to say it, and I do have to drive this home. What you've learned here is but the first of many steps, the first chunk of knowledge of many chunks, if you're interested in learning AWS. There is a lot to AWS. So much that even though I've been working with, consulting for, and building with AWS for years, I still don't even know what every single service does because there's hundreds. It's crazy. However, if that seems overwhelming, take comfort in the fact that you don't need to learn all 100 of the different servers plus, right? All the different things that are out there, all the new bells and whistles. You only need to learn the fundamentals, and then from there, the services and skills specific to what you're trying to accomplish. And so to leave you with a learning path, I'm going to walk through what those fundamental services are so you can know what to learn next. Well, the first thing you need to learn by and far, and there's not even a contest here, is VPCs. You need to understand networking on AWS. It is present in everything you'll do on AWS. I don't care what service you're using, you're going to have to use VPCs. And why? For the same reason that a computer not attached to your home network is pretty useless, assuming you want to access the internet. Okay, Cole, but what about the default VPC? Isn't that good enough? The default VPC, again, is good for experimenting around, and that is absolutely it. Trying to work everything off of that, again, would be like trying to run your company's internet through free Starbucks Wi-Fi or any restaurant's free Wi-Fi. Okay, yeah, it's not that bad, but the default VPC, again, is 100% open and public. Now, the second reason is that VPCs are one of the only things that are one and done. And by that, I mean if you make a VPC and you make it wrong, and then you add all these servers and services to it and then discover that the VPC is wrong. Well, you can edit some things about a VPC, but there are a lot of things like the size of the VPC that you cannot edit once it's created. Well, if you needed a bigger VPC, guess what you can't do? You can't make it bigger. And if you can't make it bigger, what is your migration path? Well, you'd have to make a brand new VPC and migrate every single service and server to the new one, which, of course, can be very painful. And finally, because so much of the cloud security for AWS sits in this service, it makes it even more essential. Now, if you're interested, make sure you stay on my mailing list because I do have a larger series that covers VPCs in depth just like this. We create a professional VPC, go into all of the concepts, and even learn how to create one using infrastructure as code using CloudFormation. So you get a nice bonus in that series by also learning about CloudFormation fundamentals. So next up, identity and access management. Now, I'll link to a very in-depth post that I created on IAM below this video. But IAM is how you'll manage all permissions across your AWS account and its services. It is the security hub in AWS. Much like VPCs, IAM is used in everything in AWS. Again, it doesn't matter what service you're using, you will run into IAM. If you don't know this, I'm going to be straight with you. You won't even know if what you build on AWS is actually secure. You just won't. Because AWS communicates its security in what are known as the Iam Policies, which we've touched on. Well, Iam Policies are written in AWS's own little funky JSON syntax, and that's how you define permissions. And if you don't understand this, you're going to have some long nights trying to figure out why certain services are denying or allowing the wrong traffic. And that's best case scenario. Worst case scenario is you have, public user bases trying to access your application. They're trying to get to it, and no one knows why anyone can't get to your application. So understanding IAM is a critical piece. But in second, I would do VPCs first, and then IAM. And so then third, well, this was going to pop up at some point, but S3. S3, the first starting point for so many developers on the web. You probably already get the gist of S3. It's an object storage service. It's cheap as all get out and as reliable as the sun coming up tomorrow. Whether you know it or not, much like IAM and VPCs, S3 is used almost everywhere in AWS, beneath the surface. When AWS communicates between services, they will often put things in an S3 bucket first and then do what they need to do. For example, if you work with CloudFormation, when you launch a template, the first thing that they do in the background is create an S3 bucket to store the different versions of the template that you upload. Or if you get into code deploy, well, for whatever reason, it has to put the code it's compiling and deploying into an S3 bucket in between almost every step. And on a related but side note, I want you to really think of how often you hear about S3 bucket breaches. It's kind of comedic how often it happens. The number of these buckets that are just left open or with wrong permissions, it's absurd. Well, this is why IAM, so Identity Access Management, is better to learn before S3. Why? Because S3 uses IAM policies to secure its contents. Now, granted, they can use both IAM policies and also S3 bucket policies, but they both use the exact same syntax and semantics. And these policies, which are just a set of rules that allow or deny permissions, these are the root, generally, of every single one of these breaches. I suppose the exceptions are some of them where they didn't even bother putting one on, or they did put one on and just copy and pasted from the documentation. Okay, so those are the three: VPCs, IAM, and S3. And this brings us to our fourth topic, the fourth fundamental: load balancers and auto-scaling groups. The thing is, even though setting up instances individually is very educational, in practice, you'll be launching fleets of instances. You'll probably have one of your applications running on a number of servers. And why? Well, obviously because one machine can only do so much. And so what we do is we put it on multiple machines and then put a proxy in front of it of all of the traffic coming to our service and balance the traffic between all of our machines. And of course, by machines, I mean EC2 instances, because they're not real machines, they're virtual machines. Well, AWS gives us the tools to very easily manage this, to deal with splitting traffic up between multiple instances or load balancing. They have their load balancers, their application load balancer, the network load balancer, and the outdated classic load balancer. And that's nice, but what about launching fleets of EC2 instances? Well, launching them one by one would be pretty obnoxious. That's what auto-scaling groups are for, and we touched on those briefly. With an auto-scaling group, instead of making one instance, instead you make a template for an instance called a launch configuration. You then give this to the auto-scaling group and tell it how many servers you want and what data centers, also known as availability zones, what they should be in. And that's it. It launches them and keeps them alive. If one goes down, it'll put up a new one in its place. If you need to update all of the servers, just change the template and the auto-scaling group will replace the old servers with the new ones incrementally so that you don't have to interrupt traffic. Now again, why is this fundamental? This one out of all four probably looks the most out of place. It's fundamental because doing this stuff is something you will do in pretty much every infrastructure. I don't care if what you're trying to do is just process data. You will probably need more than one server to do it. And so since every single infrastructure out there will more than likely scale beyond one machine, well, this is how you do it sanely. Okay, so those are the four bare minimum fundamentals. Now, in the master workshop that I conduct, where we build a professional infrastructure from nothing, we go through all four of these and more. And we don't just talk about the concepts and the stuff. I mean, we build a real auto-scaling, self-healing infrastructure that you can use in almost anything. But what about after you learn those four fundamentals? Because that's always the next question. Once you've got all that knowledge under your belt, it'll actually be pretty apparent to you what to learn next. By that point, you'll be able to see how you can use AWS to improve your company or anything else that you're doing. And since you'll be comfortable with it, you'll start researching new services yourself. And so that's how you determine what to learn after those fundamentals. You ask yourself, what do I want to build? Or what does my company need me to build? At that point, you'll be able to look through the catalog of AWS services and pick the right tools for the right job. And you'll be so much faster because you already know networking, security, static storage, and how to make fleets of servers. So all the hard stuff. All right, I hope this series helped gear you up for EC2. Folks, this is the bread and butter of cloud computing, and now you know it. If you like this series and it helped you, hit me up on Twitter and share it with someone you think it might help. And finally, if you're interested in joining one of my other programs or my master workshop, be sure to check your email. When I open new programs up, both paid and free, I'll be sure to let you know.